Show more 2:59 a.m. Donald Trump is on a losing streak in federal courts, and this week the losses are stacking up fast. A federal judge has just issued a landmark ruling that permanently blocks Trump from placing his name on the Kennedy Center, one of the most symbolically charged decisions to come out of the judiciary in months. And that's just the beginning of what this ruling actually does. Judge Cooper, an Obama appointee, didn't stop at the name. He issued a sweeping decision that touches on congressional authority, fiduciary duty, and the very integrity of one of America's most sacred cultural institutions. The judge found that Trump's hand-picked board of trustees violated the organic statute that Congress established to govern the Kennedy Center, the sole living memorial to President John F. Kennedy in Washington, the 600th. A statute, by the way, that has stood for over 50 years without serious challenge. Until now. Where are you watching from today? If you believe the world is entering a far more dangerous phase of political and global instability, subscribe now because the next major escalation could arrive faster than most people expect. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think about courts standing up to executive overreach. Then let's keep going because this ruling goes much deeper than most people realize. The situation is escalating rapidly, and here's why this matters beyond the headline. When Trump came into office, he moved quickly and aggressively to capture the Kennedy Center. He fired the existing board of trustees, replaced them with loyalists, including the wives of prominent cabinet members like Howard Lutnick and J.D. Vance, and within a short period, those newly installed trustees voted to rename the Kennedy Center after Trump himself. They also voted to shut the entire institution down for 2 full years, beginning as early as this July, ostensibly for renovations, but the judge saw through it. And the record he reviewed told a damning story. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who serves as an ex officio member of the board by virtue of her congressional seat, attempted to participate in these votes. She is not just a token presence, she carries fiduciary duties to the public as a trustee. But when she tried to speak, when she tried to push back and register her objections, she was muted, literally placed on mute during the meeting. Then, after her voice had been silenced, the board declared the vote unanimous. That is how brazen this capture of a public institution had become. Judge Cooper's response was unambiguous. He permanently blocks the renaming. He permanently blocks the bylaw changes that were designed to strip ex officio members like Beatty of their voting rights. And he issues a preliminary injunction against the July shutdown, finding that the board acted with dereliction of duty, failing entirely to explore whether repairs could be completed while the center remained open to the public. That is the legal standard for trustees: prudence, deliberation, and acting in the interest of the beneficiary, which in this case is the American people. The judge found they failed that standard on every level. Few people realize how serious this has become from a constitutional standpoint. What the court is really saying is that a president cannot simply install loyalists into positions of public trust and then use those loyalists as instruments of political will. Trustees of public institutions have independent legal duties that exist above and beyond any loyalty to whoever appointed them. When those duties are violated, when decisions are preordained, when dissenting voices are silenced, when a vote is declared unanimous after the opposing trustee was muted, that is not governance. That is the appearance of process masking the absence of it. The judge quotes Trump himself in a clip recorded before the board ever voted, where Trump essentially announces the decision to close the Kennedy Center as if it were already made. That clip became part of the evidentiary record. The board, according to the court, didn't deliberate, they ratified, and that distinction is legally fatal to their position. Pressure is building behind the scenes because the White House knows this ruling has broader implications. If courts are willing to hold presidentially appointed trustees to genuine fiduciary standards, it doesn't stop at the Kennedy Center. It raises serious questions about every institution Trump has moved to capture through board replacement and unilateral appointments. This changes the strategic calculation for the administration considerably. What makes this ruling particularly powerful is its framing. Judge Cooper chose to open his 93-page decision with the words of John F. Kennedy himself, words spoken in 1962 at a White House arts fundraiser that featured performers including a 7-year-old Yo-Yo Ma. Kennedy spoke about art knowing no national boundaries, about how artists do the quiet work of centuries behind the storm of daily conflict, building bridges between peoples and reminding humanity of what unites us more than what divides us. The judge then closes the opinion, 90 pages later, by returning to that same language, using Kennedy's own vision of artistic institutions as the legal and moral framework for why the board's conduct was indefensible. That is not just judicial rhetoric. That is a deliberate and devastating rhetorical choice that places Trump's actions in direct opposition to the values of the man whose name the center bears. The judge is essentially saying you cannot honor Kennedy's memory by erasing it. And the institutional conflict here is far from over. The court made clear it is not trying to micromanage the Kennedy Center. It is not prescribing exactly how renovations should happen or how the center should be programmed. It is simply holding the board to minimum legal requirements, the kind that any trustee of any public institution is supposed to meet. But what happens next will be telling. Trump almost certainly appeals the naming prohibition alone because that is the most politically visible element of the ruling. An appeal would push this into the circuit courts and potentially toward the Supreme Court, raising the stakes significantly. Analysts are increasingly concerned that these battles over cultural institutions are not peripheral skirmishes. They are part of a much larger pattern of attempting to use the levers of institutional appointment to reshape American public life in ways that bypass legislative authority entirely. The Kennedy Center ruling, precisely because it is grounded in congressional statute and common law fiduciary duty, represents one of the more durable legal frameworks for resisting that pattern. And the fact that it came in the form of a permanent injunction, not a temporary restraining order, not a preliminary pause, but a permanent block, signals that the court views this as settled on the merits, not just a close procedural call. The shutdown may still happen. The judge left that door open, but only under a very specific condition. The board must return with a proper deliberative record, must allow Congresswoman Beatty to participate meaningfully, and must demonstrate that it genuinely considered alternatives before concluding closure was the only viable path. If they cannot do that, and given the political dynamics that produce this board, that is a significant if the preliminary injunction stands and the July closure does not happen. What we are watching in real time is the judiciary functioning exactly as it was designed to, as a check on institutional capture, on executive overreach, and on the destruction of public trusts built across generations. The Kennedy Center was created by an act of Congress in the wake of a national tragedy. It belongs not to any administration, not to any board of political appointees, but to the American people. And at least one federal judge has now said so clearly, forcefully, and permanently, in the words of the president, it was built to honor.